Another round of applause for the Ioannidis. What a blessing. I said, is it hard to see why the Ioannidis do seven figures with a giving heart like that? When you have that attitude, things just seem to happen. And they don't have to be here. They don't get paid to be here. And they don't get paid to share all this information with you. So count your blessings that they are here. In fact, for those of you that are working with them as mentors, you're very lucky to have them, because nobody I know better has done more than they have in the sphere of what we're trying to teach here. So, okay, let's get. I want to pre-screen some more of your deals before we get through today. I have a few of them that you brought, and I have a few of them that came from my office. I brought just in case you guys didn't bring enough. Shh. And then we got a lot of paperwork to get through today. We got agreements both to buy and sell. Just got a ton of stuff to get accomplished. I don't know what time we're going to get out of here, but whenever it is, you will have a lot to do when you leave. Okay, how many of you are already so confused you just don't know what you're going to do next? Huh? All right, we got one. Okay, how many of you are a whole lot better off than when you came yesterday morning? You get this stuff now. Okay, who thinks you're going to be an expert when you leave this afternoon? Nobody. Good, because you're not. Here's what's going to have to happen when you go. You're going to have to get out there and generate some leads. They're going to come in. You're going to pre-screen them as we're doing here. You're going to contact them. You're going to be uncomfortable for a little while. You're going to make mistakes. And you're also going to have some successes. Because some of these people need you so bad, they will even accept your blundering and work with you anyway. Because they want out of their houses. And you'll discover that you don't have to be really that good at it. You don't have to be a great negotiator or a great orator, great communicator. You don't have to be a great anything. You just have to give people the opportunity to get out of their house. And many of them are going to take you up on that opportunity. And as you go along, the better you get at that, the easier everything gets, and the more deals you do, and the less leads you have to acquire, to process, to get through the mess, to get as many as you can handle. And then pretty soon you'll be at the point to where you can't handle anymore, and then you'll start getting help other than the VA. I would hope that you're going to get a VA immediately after leaving here. Sorry, if you haven't already. Many of you already have. I can't imagine why you would leave and not have a conversation with Elsa before you go. We brought her to the room so you can do just exactly that. She has no other reason to be here. And if you don't get her started, then you better ask yourself, gosh, what am I going to do? Who's going to do all this work? And of course the answer is ugly, because it would be you. And if it is you, the work won't get done. Let's be frank with each other, shall we? If you're going to do the work, it will not get done, because you got all this other stuff. And pretty soon something comes up that's more important than calling those sellers today. And next thing you know, they don't get called. And then they never get called, because that something just keeps on coming up. And minutia sets in, and procrastination is already set in, and nothing's happening, and time goes by, and then the next seminar comes up, and you come to the seminar, and you listen to all the other people making a lot of money, and you wonder, what the heck's wrong with me? Well, what's wrong with me is that you didn't start the machine, you didn't get the right tools in place, you didn't get the VA to start and help and get through that front-end process of getting them trained, and therefore you don't have any prospects, therefore you don't have any business. And if you fail to do that, everything else will suffer. Today we're going to start with agreements to buy, and then we're going to get into selling the houses, and then we're going to get into the agreements to sell, so that everybody's clear on agreements. Before we get into agreements, I'm going to tell you right now, everybody grossly over-worries about agreements, because there's nothing you can do in an agreement that will harm you in these cases, because you have nothing at risk to begin with. And people tend to forget that. I'm not investing any money, and I'm not putting up my credit. I really don't have any way to lose, except maybe get sued, and that's why I use attorneys, so that don't happen. And that's the way this whole thing has been structured for you, if you'll just follow the system and use it. Now, I am going to start this morning on page 76. You're in your manuals. Okay, who's excited about getting into agreements? Who can hardly wait? I can hardly wait. I've been looking forward to this all night. All right, let's start by page 76. Get a signed agreement. Get a signed agreement. All right, first let me tell you, and this goes for pretty anything you do in business, guys, whether it be real estate or not. We live in a society where there's an awful lot of hot air floating around. I mean, people talk. They make promises. I'm going to do this. How great I am, and you could easily just absorb it and assume that they're actually telling you the truth. When will you know if you got a deal? When somebody says you got a deal? No. When you get it in writing, and then you only have a semi-deal, because you get it in writing doesn't necessarily mean it's going to close either, does it? Now you're in charge of closing this one, but do things still go wrong? Well, this much I'll tell you: in the world of commercial, just because you put a property under contract doesn't mean a squat, doesn't mean a darn thing. At least 50% of the projects that are put under contract out there in the commercial world fall out before they ever get to closing. In fact, I've had 3 apartment complexes fall out in the last few months. I mean, they fell out because I made them fall out because the due diligence flunked. Went out to look to see what we were buying, and it wasn't much. It was not what we expected. In this case, they were in war zones. Well, not really. One of them was. 2 of them were. But the numbers didn't make any sense for the area. The rents were so low, the cost of renovating the property was more than the value of the property after renovated. And that's very common out there right now. And rents will determine that. All commercial properties are determined by their net operating income, the value. And if you can't get that up there, I mean, the value is the value is the value. And you can't change how they determine the value. You can only change the value. And if you can't make it work, you can't make it work. I remember we went all the way to Memphis, Josh Caldwell and I. We had this 200-unit apartment complex under contract for $500,000. And it was pretty in the picture. Now, it had a beautiful wrought iron fence around it. That fence must have been $150,000. I mean, we couldn't even get through the fence without a key. And couldn't even get through the gate. So we get up there, though, and then we got on the inside. And the bank had closed the place down and vacated it. And the vandals just went in there and just ripped the insides out of this place, took the copper out of it, just destroyed the insides, as they do in a lot of projects. That the banks, in their infinite wisdom, take over a project and decide to vacate it, which is a dumb move. You're better off leaving drug-addicted, dealing derelicts in there than vacate the property. At least there's somebody there. So what happens when you vacate a property? The vandals just swoon in and gut the place. And of course, that's exactly what happened here. And as it turned out, what we thought was $10,000 a unit rehab turned out to be about $25,000 a unit rehab, and the units weren't worth a nickel more than $20,000 after rehab. So, dead deal. Dead deal. Just had one in Alabama under contract, and sent a guy over there. He said, man, this is not a C property. It's not even a D property. It's somewhere below D minus property, a D minus area. I said, I don't even want to come here during the day with a gun, much less at night. I wouldn't come here at night with a SWAT team. So how do you rent a property like that? The answer is you don't, which is why it's sitting there vacant. All right, contract over. Call the deposit back and we're done. So the point is, just because you put something under contract does not necessarily mean that it's going to go. You guys hear realtors tell you all the time, when you're talking about bank-owned properties, well, that was under contract. Well, don't assume that means it's closed, because it is not closed. Not closed till somebody brings money. And all kinds of things happen to keep it from closing. So you always got to keep your eye on the ball. When you talk to a FSBO, and a FSBO tells you, well, I got a buyer, Well, human nature just shuts off immediately. Okay, well, that one's over. Well, it's not over. What does that mean you have a buyer? Do you have it under contract? No, but I got a guy who says he'll pay me X. Okay, well, that tells me she doesn't have it sold. In fact, she doesn't have anything but hot air. Like they say in Texas, tall hat, no cattle. I'm getting prepared for Texas. I'm going out there, doing a boot camp in a couple of months, and Nikki bought me a white cowboy hat. So I look like J.R. Ewing. If they say I've got it under contract, that does not mean it's going to close. So at least follow through to see that it does happen. Okay, I'm on page 77. When to use what agreement and when to get it signed. I put this in here because we have so many questions about this. Well, what agreement do I use and when do I use it? You have questions about that? Is this something you want to know? Okay, it's right in here in the book for you. All right, there's two phases. You're buying and you're selling. You're buying and you're selling. Your buying means you're either leasing it, or you're owner financing it, or you're paying cash for it, or you're optioning it. When you're selling, it means you're either lease optioning it, selling it with owner financing, or selling it to a cash buyer. And that is it. There's nothing in between. There's only three exit strategies. Sell with owner financing, lease purchase to a tenant buyer, or sell to a qualified buyer, or of course move into it, and that's not an exit strategy, that's just a temporary delay. There's only three exit strategies. And knowing that, it does make the contracting a little simpler. But again, what you guys got to quit worrying about is the agreements, because all you have to think about is, what is my intent? What is my oral agreement here with the other side? And then put it down in writing the best you can. You are not attorneys. You're not trained on using legalese. So you're going to write in plain old simple language, and you're just going to write it down the best way you can write it. And that's why your attorneys are going to fix it if they don't like it. If your attorney doesn't like something in your agreement, he will change it at closing and get the other side to initial it. If it's something that could cause a problem, he'll recognize it and make you aware of it. And frankly, the only time something could cause you a problem is if the other side disputes this transaction and wants to get into a battle with you anyway. If you run your business the way I'd like to see you run your business, that's never going to happen, because we're going to run our business so that we don't have to fight with people. Frankly, if they want their house back, I'd rather give them their house back than go to court with them. If my tenant buyer wants their deposit back, I'm going to go to court with them, because I'm not going to give them their deposit back after they've been in the house. I've had a couple here recently moved out of the house and thought they were getting their deposit back. It didn't take them long to figure out that wasn't true. Can't blame them for trying, though, can you? Somebody gives you a $10,000 deposit, can you blame them for trying? No. But they're not going to try very long before they're realizing they're approaching a dead-end battle, and that's all because of the agreements. In fact, we just had a few months ago, last year, we lease optioned a property on the west side. It was only an $85,000 house that I bought at an auction for $30,000. I put a tenant buyer in it, and they gave me $15,000 non-refundable deposit on an $85,000 house. Okay, he lived in that house maybe 7 months, and then I think he lost his job and he had to move. And he called us, and he said, "Listen, I can't afford the house anymore. I lost my job." He says, "Can I get my deposit back?" And we said, "No, you can't. You know that. You knew that before you called, didn't you?" He said, "Well, yes, but I thought I'd try." So finally I agreed. But if you'll move out of the house and leave it clean and let us know, we'll come visit it. And if it is clean and you're out of it, we'll give you $1,000 of your deposit back so you can move. He says, "Well, I told him I'll give him $1,500 of a deposit back." That's what we finally agreed upon. He says, "Well, I'll take that offer, except that I don't have the money to move." I said, "Well, all right." Ain't this a fine pickle I'm in? So I said, here's what I'll do. You can come in and sign a little agreement that you'll accept the $1,500 for the full settlement of your deposit, and I'll give you $500 now, and then as soon as you're out and the place is clean, I'll give you the balance. Now, was that taking a $500 risk? Oh, not really, because here's what I know that he didn't know. When somebody gives you $15,000 on an $85,000 purchase price, if he wanted to, he could force me to have to foreclose him out of that property. When you get to the point to where you're collecting about 20% or so of the total purchase price, and you've got that money in your possession, they have rights in most states. They can literally force you to foreclose them out because the court will probably rule that they have too much invested to just walk away from. You've got to keep that in mind. So I was thrilled to settle with him for $1,500 to avoid any action like that. And I was intent to do whatever I needed to do to get him out peacefully, because I did not want to fight him on this, because I was afraid I was in a poor position. And to foreclose would have taken months, not to mention about $2,000 worth of legal fees and court costs. Okay, let's start from scratch on page 77. And notice at the top now, it's clearly labeled that we are when to use what agreement and when to get signed on acts. So we are referring to acts only. I'm going to go through them here in a minute, but you may or may not want to use a letter of intent. There's one in here. We used it heavily in the front end. We use it very lightly now, and now we only use it when they want to see something in writing before we meet. It is not a requirement by any stretch of imagination. You must get a lease purchase agreement signed by the seller. And the one you're going to get signed by the seller, if you intend to assign it, we're going to discuss this afternoon. We're going to discuss the one in a minute that you intend to get signed because you're staying in it on a sandwich lease. Two totally different agreements. You should get an authorization to release signed so that you or whoever you pass it on to can get any information concerning the mortgage or about the house. You will get a general release signed from the seller. You may not get it signed immediately, but you will get your attorney needs to get it signed before it's over. And we've been doing that at the time that the buyer closes. The attorney contacts the seller to verify that the seller understands what's going on and gets them to sign whatever else is not signed at that point and that he wants them to sign. The seller's acknowledgement form, if you have not seen that, you're going to love that. I know your attorney's going to love it because it's the CYA letter from hell. It is clear in that they have not been taken advantage of, and very well that might be what saves your bacon if anybody ever wants to sue you right there. We'll cover that. So when I'm buying, those are the things that I want signed. I'm not buying. I'm leasing with the option to buy on an axe deal. I know I'm going to assign it. I know I'm not staying in it. Is everybody clear on that? Okay? Now when I'm selling that same deal, it's real easy. All I need to get signed is an assignment of that lease and a general release from my buyer and anything else above from the seller that hasn't been signed at that time. Now, when the buyer is signing all of this stuff, where are they signing it? In front of the attorney. I want the buyer in front of the attorney. I don't want it done by mail. I want the buyer to physically go to the attorney's office, sit in the attorney's office, look him or her in the face, have him or her explain to them a situation, put the documents out in front of them, get them to sign them physically. Nothing done by mail or email. And sometimes you're going to get an opportunity where they want to do it that way. No. If they're going to live in a house in your city, then there's no reason they can't go to an attorney in your city to sign this stuff. All right, on a sandwich lease on the next page now, a letter of intent if you choose the lease option agreement that we're about to go over, and the notice of real estate option, which is a device you're going to record to protect your interest, and this EYA letter designed for this type of transaction, which we're about to get to. You can get all of those things signed in the home if you want. By the way, if they will sign your lease option agreement, they will sign the rest of that stuff without an issue. If you don't get all of it signed in the home, you need to get all of it signed before the buyer's closing is finished. And then when you're selling, all you need to get signed is the real property possession and lease agreement. And where's that signed? In front of your attorney. In front of your attorney. An option is real simple. I get an option agreement signed by the seller, and if I want to, I can get a notice of real estate option agreement. I don't, because frankly, I don't lay awake at night worrying about the seller screwing me. Remember, I'm only optioning it for 3 months to begin with, and I've never had a situation where the seller tried to go behind my back and sell the house without telling me about it when I have it under contract. I just don't worry about it. And if that were to happen, I still have all the legal rights that I have within the option agreement. I can hold them accountable. I can sue the seller and the buyer. I can sue the title company that issued the buyer title insurance. I mean, I can have a blast if the seller tries to screw me out of the deal. I don't worry about it. Of course, I don't worry about litigation either, because litigation is a business tool. It's not something to be feared. It's something that you use when you need to use it, because it's certainly going to be used against you sometime during your career. So you might as well get used to the fact that this is a litigious society we're in. So I don't use it unless somebody does me wrong and I can't get it fixed without, nobody wants to go hire attorneys. But they got to eat too. So I'm not afraid of it. I'm not afraid of somebody jerking me around if I have a contract with them. I mean, it could get really ugly for them. If they sign an option agreement with you and then they go sell it behind your back, it could get really ugly for them. I mean, they could, depending on what state you're in, it might even be subject to punitive damages, which sometimes is 3 times what the judge says the award is. So, I don't worry about stuff like that. If you do, because you're an analytical personality, then you're going to want to get that notice of real estate option agreement signed and get it recorded. Then they ain't selling behind your back. Okay, when I'm selling on an option, then all I need is a purchase and sale agreement from my buyer. And you got 2 choices here. If it's a cash buyer, then there's no bank involved. I may just want to assign it to my buyer, but I got to tell you, that means your buyer is fully aware of how much money you're making. And that may not be to your advantage. That may not be to your advantage. So if you're making a bunch of money on this deal, my arrangement with the seller is that you're going to sell it for whatever price I sell it for. The HUD one's going to go from you to the buyer. You're going to get what we agreed. And on the HUD one is going to be a check to me for the difference. And I'm going to tell you how I handle that. I use one of my entities, and I ask the closing agent to write that up as a payoff of a mortgage. For example, let's say you make $100,000 on the house. Don't write it up for 100. Write it up at $99,984.50. So it looks like a payoff on a mortgage. And let's say your corporation is ABC Corp. I just have the closing agent put right on the HUD one, mortgage payoff ABC Corp. $99,984.50. You guys make sense? Hello? Okay, so ABC Corp gets a check for that amount. Are you sure that makes sense? Why don't I write it up as a commission? I don't have a license. Am I doing anything illegal? It sure seems illegal, doesn't it? There's nothing illegal about this. I have an option. I have every right to sell that house because I have it under control. I have every right. And if you think there's something wrong with signing a contract, all we're doing is kind of wholesaling. The table you're sitting on, do you think this hotel bought it directly from the manufacturer? No. That table went through at least 2 middlemen before it got to the hotel. Each one of them made money. Well, all the manufacturer did was wholesale it to the wholesaler, and the wholesaler wholesaled it to the next guy, and he retailed it to the hotel. That's the same thing you're doing in real estate. There's nothing illegal about it, nothing shaky about it, there's nothing immoral about it, and there's nothing wrong with you getting paid. Incidentally, how do you think the chains like McDonald's and the Wendy's and Arby's and all of those chains, how do you think they find and Walgreens? I happen to know a guy who does this for Walgreens. How do you think they find those locations? Many of them have front-end men that go out and put those locations under contract and then flip them to the company that wants to build on them. With the cooperation of the company, they're flipping them too. And they know the stats that the company requires. They know the requirements for them to even want it. They put it under contract to option it and then let the company decide for sure that they want it. And they get a fee in the middle. Now that fee is semi-controlled, but I can assure you it is 6 figures and sometimes 7 figures for just being in the middle. And that's all they do it. Option it, sell it. There's a whole world out there that you haven't been exposed to yet. All right. Next page, 79. This is when I'm going to go buy it from the owner with seller financing, and the terms suck, but I intend to assign my contract to an owner-occupant that wants to buy it with owner financing. I need a purchase and sale agreement, an authorization to release, and the CYA letter signed. And then I'm going to do nothing but have the attorney do an assignment of contract and a general release. I still like the general releases. And you will too when we read it. My attorney wrote it. And you can tell an attorney wrote this one. General release means what to you? It means if something goes wrong, don't call me, because you have released me from all liability for any future action. All right. Before I go any further, is there any questions on this section right now before we get into the actual agreements? I will need a microphone. All right. Oh, right here first.
Ron, on the options, I'm just wondering, can you do this? Could you take a property, let's say under option for $500,000, and you want to sell it for $600,000? There's some services that allow you to list a property under the MLS at a flat fee. Could you list it on the MLS for a flat fee for $600,000 and just pay the buyer's agent a commission and you make the spread?
I could if I have the seller's permission.
Okay.
In writing.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And most realtors aren't smart enough to even check the title and know what's going on anyway.
Is that a good idea?
Well, I don't know. It's going to come with complications. Sooner or later, the realtor is going to be privy to what's going on. Not that they should care. With the seller's cooperation, there's nobody to complain. But then, I guess you're going to pay a commission. If that's okay with you, it's okay with the seller, it's okay with the realtor. I don't see any problem with it. But I think I'd first try to sell it myself.
You keep saying using an attorney. Would you prefer an attorney or one with a title that's connected to a title agency? I'm in the state of Florida.
I didn't understand what you said. With your voice, you got to hold that mic away from you a little bit. Okay. Are you a radio voice or what? Huh? Should this guy be doing commercials or what? All right.
You keep saying use closing with an attorney. Is this better?
Yes.
Would it be better to use a title agency with an attorney, or just strictly only use a real estate attorney to do these deals?
I'm okay with you using a title agency with an attorney as long as it's clear that the attorney within the agency is representing you, not the agency, and that may or may not be possible. As long as the attorney is representing you, I don't care where they work.
All right, so it's definitely a real estate attorney.
Yes, definitely a real estate attorney. Best not to get a divorce attorney to do real estate stuff. Or you might need a divorce attorney before it's over. Luke.
Ron, when buying, on the X and on the lease option, either of those, any of those documents you get signed in the house, or
Yes.
are they all?
Yes. Okay, Lou, let's go back, because that's a good question. I thought I was clear on that, but apparently I was not.
Well, with the X, I was under the impression that you don't get that document signed until you have a buyer.
No, that's exactly the opposite of the reality. Guys, let me say it again. You do not solicit for buyers until you have an agreement with the seller signed by the seller. If you do, you're practicing real estate without a license. Okay? I want the lease option agreement signed by the seller in the seller's home, whether it's an axe or whether it's a sandwich lease. I want the purchase and sale agreement signed by the seller if it's a property that I am buying or that I am agreeing to buy that I intend to assign. On the buying side, it's signed by the seller in the seller's house. On the selling side, it's signed in front of an attorney, but remember, the attorney is to contact the seller, make sure everybody's clear, make sure all the documentation is in place, and the seller is acknowledging such. Now, why am I insisting that you do that? Because if you ever do have a problem, I want the attorney to be able to testify. Your Honor, I contacted the seller myself. I acknowledged that they signed everything, and at that point, they were in full agreement with everything we were doing, as evidenced by what they signed. And you know what? When the judge hears that, what do you think's happening in his mind? Could we please get this over so I could get the heck out of here and get back to my television show? I mean, this case is won. This case is done. But out of politeness, he'll sit there and listen to everybody. You have a question? Over here? Any back there first? All right. Go.
Going back to the gentleman back here who asked you a question about the title company and the attorney. If the attorney happens to own the title company, and it's someone that is a personal friend, what do you do?
Nothing, as long as it's clear they're representing me. And
Even though they own their own title company?
I don't care if they own the title
Okay.
company.
All right.
I don't care. That doesn't make any difference. As long as they're representing you, they have a fiduciary responsibility to represent you. Now, it wouldn't hurt for you to get that in writing that they are representing you.
In that one-off?
Yeah.
Okay.
Look, you know what? A lot of this is your gut. It's your gut. If you think you're dealing with the right people, you probably are. If they look like the right people, but you think you're dealing with the wrong people, you probably are. In fact, I was just listening to Jack Welch, his ex-CEO, coming in here today and listening to his CDs. That's exactly what he said. He says, sometimes everything looks right, but your gut tells you no. Trust your gut. Yes. Especially if the gut is from a female. They have this intuition that is just uncanny. I mean, that's absolutely uncanny. And my wife, every time my wife has ever told me not to deal with somebody, I told her she was full of crap, and guess what happened? She was right. So now, if I expose her to these somebodies before I deal with them, she says, don't deal with them. At least I know what's going to happen before I deal with them. Yes.
Okay, you were saying don't solicit buyers until we sign the document
Correct.
for the seller. But isn't that kind of what we're doing if we have a website collecting a list?
No, I'm not soliciting buyers for that particular seller is what I'm saying.
Okay.
You don't
All
go
right, so we can have a
advertising
list.
that house that you do not have under control. Oh, yeah, you can advertise for buyers till the cows come home, but not particularly. I don't want it to appear that you're selling that house for that person for a fee.
Gotcha. Okay.
When you get it under contract, you're selling it for you, and you're not collecting anything from the seller. Right here.
Ron, when you're doing an axe deal, you negotiate, the payments don't start 3 months out? And why,
No.
if you do? No.
In an axe deal, I only take the first payment. John, what do you guys do? Because you're
It's
allowed to
irrelevant.
do whatever you want to do, but don't get crazy here. Remember, pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered.
I've been told by you to take one payment, and so far I still haven't.
That's what you do?
No, we're not.
Huh?
We're not taking any payments.
Well, remember, though, that the buyer does have to bring the first month's rent
Right.
to closing.
Right.
You know, I'm taking it just to have to keep the attorney from having to send the money two different directions.
You're just such a nice guy.
That's my story.
You're just such a nice guy.
Okay. No, I don't have any problem. I'll tell you, we've not had the least bit of resistance collecting the first month's rent because it's done right there. And the sellers just don't seem to have a problem with only waiting a month after we find the buyer. Remember, we're finding the buyer within a week or two or three, usually, and they just don't have a problem with it.
Right.
So, and we're collecting the money from the buyer, we're not collecting it from the seller. So we're going to continue to do it. You do it the way you want to do it. All right, that it? Then let's get into the agreements, the part you've been waiting for. On page 81, preparing an agreement. All right, down at the bottom now, there is a big warning. And folks, I don't care what state you live in. If you are buying properties from people that are in foreclosure, you're going to need separate agreements, different agreements that are not in this book. And you're going to have to get a set of those agreements from your local attorney or your local title company or somewhere in your state. Because people in foreclosure are pretty much a protected species all over the land now. And they have special rules that you better know before you go dealing with them. For example, in Florida, I cannot take over a loan subject to from somebody that is in foreclosure if they are living in the house. If foreclosure has been filed and they're still in the house, the only way I can buy their house is all cash. Period. No exceptions. If I write a contract that I'll lease option their house, I'm violating the law. The only way I can buy their house is all cash. And even if I write an all-cash offer, it has to be on a special forms with special print and special type and a right of rescission where they can back out 3 days after they sign the contract. And that's 3 working days. All proper paperwork. And if I get caught violating that rule, there's some pretty serious penalties. In the state of Maryland, you cannot buy a house out of foreclosure if it's 20 days away from the sale, unless you have a real estate license for some strange reason. Okay? Washington, I mean, everywhere I go, there's rules. So do not deal with people in foreclosure unless you know the rules. In the state of Washington, you can't even mail to people that are in foreclosure or that you think might be someday. That's true. That's pretty much what the law says. You can't even mail to people that you have any clue are in financial distress. You can't even contact them as if you would know. That's assuming you know, of course. So you can't run a list of people in foreclosure and mail to them in Washington. All right, so know your rules. Now, what we're discussing this weekend really rarely has anything to do with anybody that's in foreclosure. We're getting them, most of the ones we're getting, their payments are current. They're not even in arrears. There are a few, every once in a while, we'll get 1 or 2, some of them that are 1 or 2 payments in arrears. For some reason, our advertising just doesn't seem to attract those folks. Now, when we do mail letters, when we mail yellow letters, you get them in all shapes and sizes, don't you? You get them free and clear, you get them in foreclosure, you get them current, you get them all kinds of ways. But when we're calling FSBOs, I guess that is the factor. I would imagine that people that are a year behind on their payments are not running an ad to sell their house. And that's why we're not getting them. Okay. You are going to have to prepare your own agreements to buy properties. There is no way that I could sit up here and advise you to have your attorney prepare all your agreements to buy houses. Nor is there any way I could advise you to have your attorney check every agreement that you present to a seller to buy a house. Because if you do, you'll be a madman or a madwoman before long. You won't be in business because the drag and the bottleneck will suck you down so far you'll never get anything done. Now, some attorneys might advise you, you know what, I don't even think that I could send you to an attorney that would advise you to do such a thing because they know how ludicrous it is to expect one to do that when you're making as many offers on houses as we're making. Just doesn't make any sense. Now, especially when you don't have anything at risk. You're not giving the seller any money, and you can back out of the agreement anytime you want, and there's nothing they can do about it. And that's why nobody cares. when it goes to closing, anything that you screwed up will be fixed. So I want you to quit worrying about screwing up agreements. And incidentally, will you screw up agreements? There's no doubt in my mind about it. You will make a mess, and you will learn as you go. And of course, the more contracts you write, the better you get at it, like anything else. All right, so let's look at page 82. And all that is a cover letter for an LOI, which is on the next page. Now, I don't care if you use this or not. Frankly, I'd rather you didn't. Because here's what, when we first started this ACT stuff, we were sending out LOIs to everybody. And then we gradually learned, well, all that does is a delay. All that does is delaying their decision. That's just delaying the process of getting a contract signed. So today, we quit sending LOIs unless the seller says, I need to see something in writing because I don't really understand what you just said. Then we'll send them an LOI. Then we'll follow up and make an appointment to go see the house and leave them a lease option agreement. The cover letter for the LOI is pretty self-explanatory. It simply says this is non-binding, and attached is what I can do for you. And please get this back to me to show me that you do have interest, or get the LOI back. On the next page is your LOI, letter of intent. And I wrote it the best and the simplest that I could write it so that the most layman of sellers could understand it. And there's a point there. You guys need to be careful about what language you use, both when you're talking and when you're writing. A good word to avoid would be to sign. That's scary. To sign a contract. That's scary. But to okay an agreement is not so scary, is it? Try to avoid the words, sign a contract. Avoid the word subject to. You do not use internal slang when you're talking to other people. You use simple language that would be difficult for them to misunderstand, like in this LOI. My intent is to locate, screen, and present to you a tenant buyer to install in the home who will ultimately qualify for a loan to purchase the home when the equity returns. I will lease with an option from you and assign my rights to said tenant buyer once you approve. There is no cost to you. Is that an important line? The agreement will be assigned at a formal closing at our attorney's office after you approve the tenant buyer, and the agreement between you and I will be executed after you have reviewed and are ready to proceed. The purchase price will equal any cash we agree you'll get at closing, if any, the payoffs of your existing mortgage loan, and any other liens such as taxes, condominium, and association fees encumbering the real property at closing. If your property is currently over-leveraged, you will not receive any proceeds of the sale when it occurs. Could I be more clear than that? The monthly rent to you will be equal to your loan payment and will not begin until 60 days after you could put 30 days after the undersigned has located a tenant purchaser you approve and my lease from you is assigned to them. The term of the lease will be a minimum of 10 years to allow the principal to pay down and value to increase to the point a buyer has enough equity to get financed and pay off the debt. The term of this letter of intent, the terms of this LOI are not binding until a formal and detailed contract are drawn and signed by both parties, but serve only to form a meeting of the minds. Now, is that pretty hard to misunderstand? Does that tell like it is? Yes or yes? All right, so if you put that in the hands of the seller and then you follow up, there's really not that much more to talk about because they have this is your offer. You've just made the offer to them. Now when you follow up, it's to make an appointment to go leave them the lease option agreement. In the beginning, we were even sending the lease option agreement out by email. and learned, all that did was scare them. We don't do that anymore. We deliver the lease option agreement to the home when and only when they understand what we're coming out to do and say, yes, please come out. Everybody clear? Now, our whole objective here is to get into the house. It's not to be firing out agreements so we don't have to go meet anybody. Our whole goal is to get into the house, not to delay that process. Therefore, when you're on the telephone with them and they get it, and you say, should I come out to the house and answer any more of your questions and bring an agreement? And they say yes. We don't need an LOI. We need an appointment. Get your butt to the house. All right. Next is the authorization to release. Everybody gets that. It's pretty simple. Just gives you the permission to get anything you need to know about the loan. And to tell you the truth, on the AX deals, we don't even get this information. We get whatever the seller's got that shows the loan balance, shows the payment, and usually the end of the year statement, and just pass that right on to the buyer. We don't verify anything with the bank. Because frankly, it doesn't make any difference anyway. Does it? When I'm assigning my contract to my buyer on a long-term lease, does it make a bit of difference what's owed today? Take a while for that one to set in. I can see by the blank stares. It really doesn't, because the purchase price is going to be what's owed whenever the buyer gets ready to buy. So, now, what if however, I'm doing a sandwich lease? Is it in my best interest to figure out what's owed today? Well, I'm happy just looking at the seller's documentation. That's all I need to see. I don't need to send anything to the bank to verify what's owed. The end of the year statement will tell me what's owed, give or take a few dollars. And sometimes they get monthly statements with a balance right on them. I do. I get one from Bank of America, I think. Balance is on there every time I get the statement. What else you need to know? All right. Now, you thinker brains, you accountants and you analytical personalities, you're going to need a stack of stuff about this deep now, just to make sure you got all your ducks in a row, right? Right, thinker brains? Huh? If it ain't an inch thick, it just can't be enough information there, correct? All right. But the truth is this. What is the worst that can happen? The worst that can happen is that you lose your entire investment in this house. Isn't that the worst that can happen? And how much is that, guys? Okay. When you finally wake up one day and realize, I got nothing to lose here, all this crap gets easier. And I know this is going to take a little bit of crossover thinking on many of you's parts, because you spend your life worrying about loss and trying to protect yourself against loss. And you just not used to working in arenas where there is no way for you to lose. And to get you to this point took an awful lot of years on my part. And you might as well enjoy it while you're here, because this is truly a business. This is not like opening a restaurant, I can tell you that. I've already lost my butt once, and I'm about doing another one, and who knows, I might lose my butt again. It takes a massive investment. It takes a lot of risk. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of money to break even. You got expenses whether people come or not. You got all these things working against you, like you do in most businesses. And yet, all we got to do is go out and get a free asset, get a few pieces of paperwork signed, have an attorney close, and start collecting money. We got no overhead. We got no risk. We got no employees. We got no outgo to worry about. What a beautiful business. So don't screw it up by overthinking it. All right, next page is your general release. My attorney wrote this, and I just have to read this. It says, in the middle it says, I hereby remiss, release, acquit, satisfy, and forever discharge the said optionee, that would be you, of and from all and all manner of action and actions, cause and causes of actions, suits, debts, dues, sums of money, accounts, reckonings, bonds, bills, specialties, covenants, contracts, controversies, agreements, promises, vacancies, variances, trespasses, damages, judgments, executions, claims, and demands whatsoever in law or in equity, which said optionor ever had, now has, or which any personal representative, successor, heir, or assign of said optionor hereafter can, shall, or may have against said optionee, for, upon, or by reason of any matter, cause, or thing whatsoever, from the beginning of the world to the date of these presents, and in particularly in regard to any lease option or contract regarding the real property located at blah. Now, no layman could write that. That is a work of art right there. And on the next page is another beautiful work of art. That's your CYA letter called Seller's Acknowledgments. And your attorney will love this. When you get this to, and by the way, all of these are on your Gold Club membership website under Resources and then under Standard Forms and Agreements. This package is under Control Without Ownership section. Is everybody in here a Gold Club member? Anybody not a Gold Club member in here? Anybody not? All right, well, you better get there, because this is where all these agreements are, where you can fill them out and be interactive with them. Under Resources, they're under Standard Forms and Agreements, and then you have Control Without Ownership, you have Work for Equity, you have Residential, you have Commercial, you have Canadian, you have U.S., and something else I can't remember. Now this one is under the Control Without Ownership, because this is different than the one where we take a debt subject to a little. So just scan this real quick. This is what the seller signs. It says, I'm the owner. I've reviewed the terms. I've received good, valuable consideration. I'm satisfied with the terms. I've assigned. I'm fully informed and with sufficient understanding. I understand I may be selling the property for less than market value, and I'm okay with that. I have agreed to sell the property to the buyer, and I'm now bound by these terms. I understand the agreement I've signed is for outright sale of the property, which it is on an option. I understand buyer may assign the agreement to another. I understand buyer may choose to close this transaction without the use of an escrow company. I understand there will be additional closing documents to sign, and upon receipt, agree to sign and deliver those closing documents. That's for your lease option deals. I understand that copies of the paperwork I've signed will be provided to me in a timely manner, and they will be. I understand the buyer may resell, option to purchase, contract to purchase, and purchase and sales agreement, or the property may realize a profit in doing so. I agree that buyer is entitled to any profit that may ultimately result from the subsequent resale of the option to purchase, contract to purchase, sale of agreement, or the property. So it's no secret that we're making a profit. I acknowledge the buyer has advised me to seek independent counsel, to seek independent financial advisor, and I understand the buyer has negotiated on his own behalf and not mine, and that the property is not listed with a real estate agent, and I have no physical, mental, or emotional ailments that preclude me from signing, and that the decision to accept this particular tenant buyer was a joint decision. I fully agree, and acknowledge and understand that upon the completion of this transaction, I shall remain primarily liable on my mortgage, and this transaction does not affect any legal obligation to continue make full and timely payments on the mortgage. I understand that the tenant buyer's failure to make full and timely payments to me or my lender does not relieve me of my obligation to make said mortgage payments, and I agree that I remain subject to the terms of the mortgage, and in the event of a default, I may be subjected to foreclosure proceedings. I'm not under the influence of any alcohol or mind-altering substance, nor am I taking medication that would cloud my judgment. I've not been promised anything other than that's described here, and I'm under no duress and have signed this agreement of my own free will. Now, notice that there's a place for the seller's initials beside every single one of those paragraphs. Now, can you imagine you being an attorney representing that seller and in court with the other side presenting this document, and you try to say that the seller didn't know what they were doing. Now, how do you think this thing came about anyway? Huh? Yeah. Last time I was in court with a lady, I bought her house from her, for crying out loud, saved her from foreclosure. Realtor sued me anyway for commission because it was listed. I knew it was listed. I bought it and I put it right in the listing agreement that to leave it listed, and if it sells, the realtor gets full commission. That didn't matter. So anyway, here comes this old lady, and she was represented by legal aid, and here comes this big old box of pills out on the table while we were in court in front of the judge, and immediately I knew I was screwed. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't understand. Now, she understood fully, trust me. Her daughter was there when I explained it to her, and then was explained to her again at the title company, and she was fully aware. But, of course, guess who paid the commission? Yeah, me. So anyway, I learned from 2 or 3 occasions where people cried or claimed stupidity after the fact. We'll stop that crap. So we created this thing, and I tell you, your attorney is going to love that document. And pretty soon it will be his CYA letter. And I'll tell you something else, guys. If you ever do get attacked from either side, and you get a call from their attorney, I can promise you their attorney does not have all the documents in his possession that they signed. Yeah, they never do. So they go in there and they whine, and the attorney sees a case, and so he takes their case and he takes their fee, and then he contacts you, and then later he finds out, wait, where did this come from? Why didn't you tell me you had this? I would advise you to go home. So when their other side gets these documents, you pretty much assume that case is over. And if it's not over, I wouldn't worry about it, because if you go to court with this stuff properly signed, the odds are way in your favor. Okay, let's get into the actual lease option agreement, which I could discuss better if I had a cup of coffee, but I don't. See, VAs don't strike either. Okay, page 90. Now this is the agreement that I get the seller to sign if I am going to stay in the deal. You see what it says at the top? Use this when you intend to lease and sublease. Do not use if you intend to assign. Thank you, John. Yes, sir. Well, you're a multi-use guy. You teach, you deliver coffee. Just a guy of multi-talents. Do not mix these up. And I notice at the top it says get signed in home or in front of the attorney. I'll tell you, you'd be well advised to get this signed in front of your attorney. I'm not telling you that you have to do that all the time, but if you can, that would be the place to get this signed. And now what you can do is you can leave it with the seller and then have them go down into the attorney and sign one in front of the attorney. But if you're afraid you're going to lose the deal, why don't you get it signed and then maybe have it re-signed in front of an attorney when you put your buyer in there, just for safety's sakes. Is it always a good idea if this is signed in front of your attorney, especially when it's a long-term deal and you're staying in it for a long time? What am I worried about when you're leasing and you intend to stay in the deal? What am I worrying about? That's right. I'm worried about the seller getting lapse of memory on you. Do sometimes people forget about the situation they were in when they made a decision 4 years ago, and now 4 years later they decide, well, I wished I hadn't done that. I think I'm going to get some of that money he's going to make. Does greed set in? Okay. And what I'm telling you is you should go into any transaction, real estate or other, assuming you're going to wind up in court and preparing for you to do so. And if you keep that at the top of your mind, which I do, then the more attorney involvement I get in these documents, the less I'm going to be concerned about that. And if I ever did go to court, the less I'm going to be concerned about that. Because your case is going to be a lot stronger if this is signed in front of an attorney than if it's signed in their living room table. I can tell you that for sure. Now, if there's a lot of equity in it, I'm going to almost insist that you get your attorney involved. But if you got a $200,000 house and they owe 180, I don't know, up to you. But remember, guys, if I go in there and I get a long-term lease, remember, I don't owe 180 10 years from now. And that's when the greed's really going to set in. When they can see all that loan paid down, and you're about to get a windfall, and now they got to sign the deed and deliver it. Well, I want some of that money. I deserve it. You really? Well, you weren't the one making the payments for the last 10 years. Yeah, but I own the house. Can you see it? All right, well, fix it. What can go wrong, and what can I do now to fix it? That's a writer-downer. What can go wrong? What can I do now to fix it? What can go wrong? Seller could get Yancey on me. What can I do now? Get it in writing, in front of an attorney. Okay. You know that you guys all operate under the prostitute theory. Everybody know what the prostitute theory is? I mean, the value of your services diminish rapidly after they've been delivered. You think about that for a moment. All right. All right, on page 90. Standard stuff at the top. Paragraph 2, we talk about the term, pretty easily laid out there. In this example in your book, now read this carefully, it says that we're only leasing it for 12 months, does it not? All right, but then read the second line. The term will automatically extend for 4 periods of 12 months unless the tenant buyer gives notice to the landlord of its intent to terminate. Now, why do you think it automatically extends? Because it used to say that we got to give notice to the seller to extend it, and then students go out there and they forget to give the notice. Okay? So I fixed it, so you can't screw it up. It automatically extends. It doesn't require you to do anything. So, in effect, what do you got here? Have you got a 1-year lease or a 5-year lease? Yes. You have both. You can get out at one, or you can stay in as long as you want. Up to you. So even if I sign it up here as ABC Corporation that owns nothing but air, after a year, the ABC Corp is not even responsible for the payments anymore. If I give the seller notice that I'm out. I can get out any time I want. And built right in there. And then it says that the liability for payment will not extend beyond notice to terminate this agreement. You are welcome. Number 3, rent. Very simple. The sum of $9.72 a month, and it begins on 8/10/13. Please note that this agreement is signed June of 13. So I've got myself 2 or 3 months before the first payment's due, just because I put it in there when the payment will begin. Also notice that below that it says that there's $200 for each month will be in which of the rent will be credited toward the purchase price. Now, guys, that only is applicable if the seller's got equity above their debt. So if they owe $170 and I'm leasing it for $170, I don't get a credit toward the purchase price, do I? Hello? There's nothing to apply the credit to. I'm leasing it for the loan balance at the time I purchase it. That's my purchase price. The seller can't give me any additional credit. They don't have anything to give me. However, if I'm leasing it for, let's say I'm optioning it for $20,000 above the loan, and I've got a 5-year lease. Now can I ask for a credit toward my $20,000 if I want to? You guys getting this? You don't look like you're getting it, huh? Yeah? Okay. Let's say my agreement with the seller is I'll lease option the property for $20,000 plus your loan balance at the time I purchase it. Now I could say, okay, I want a $200 a month credit toward that $20,000 I owe you for every month I make you a payment. Or a $100 a month credit. Or some credit. Whatever. I'm plucking it from air anyway, aren't I? Aren't I? Whatever I put in here, if the seller agrees to it, I just got that much off of the 20 grand that I owe them when we do cash out. Make sense? All right. The next paragraph. Now notice that the option to purchase is built into my lease agreement because I am buying. It is not built in when I am selling. It is totally separated. We'll get to that this afternoon. Rest of it, mumbo jumbo all the way down. You can skip nothing exciting down there to the bottom of the page. Turn the page, and let's go to paragraph number 8, where it talks about cost of improvements. Now remember now, this is the agreement that I'm leasing it from the seller with the intent to sandwich lease it to a buyer. Make sure everybody's with me on this. I do not intend to assign this agreement. This agreement is designed to protect you, not your tenant buyer, you from the seller. Cost of improvements. In the event the tenant buyer exercises the option to purchase, set forth above and for, and through no fault of the tenant buyer, the landlord fails to convey said property to the tenant buyer, yada, yada, yada. The tenant buyer is responsible for reimbursing you for all of your cost of repairs and maintenance and improvements, in addition to other legal remedies that you have. Number 9 lays out any encumbrances that are on the property. And in my example, it shows that there's a $108,500 loan and that taxes and insurance are escrowed, but there's a $5,000 IRS tax lien on the property. Therefore, it is disclosed in our agreement that I know there's an IRS tax lien on the property. Plus, in a minute, you'll see that I've agreed to pay that IRS tax lien when I actually purchase the property. And I agree to pay whatever is left on the loan balance when I purchase the property. Skip down to number 10 where it says the right of assignment. It means that I have the right to assign this agreement. I do not need their permission. You will not find that in the other one where I'm selling. And on number 11, this one we got to look at because this is the one that deals with maintenance and repairs. It says that the tenant buyer, that's you now, accepts the property as is on the date of execution of this agreement, except for items listed in paragraph 13, which is we'll get to, which is what they're going to do before you take over. The tenant shall henceforth be responsible for all maintenance and improvements as tenant shall deem necessary, proper, or desirable. Tenant meaning you. The tenant shall be solely liable for payment of said improvements and shall hold the landlord harmless except any electric, plumbing, heating, or cooling system that is out of order or any repairs exceeding blank. You could put $100 in there if you want to. At the commencement of this lease, within 30 days thereafter, will be repaired by the seller. That means any repairs over whatever number you put in there, seller pays for in the first 30 days. If the landlord cannot or will not make the repairs necessary, the tenant will have the option of either voiding the agreement or payments due to the seller or making such repairs, and A, receiving reimbursement from the next monthly payment of rent. So if you have to fix something and they can't pay for it, you have the right to take it right out of the rent. Or you can receive a credit against the purchase price and 10% interest. Now, which one do you think I would do? Yeah, it'd come right out of next month's rent, wouldn't you think? All right, move over to paragraph 13 on the next page. This is where you list anything the seller agrees to do. Anything that the seller agrees to do. Here it says painting the living room. They agree to paint their living room before you take over. And guys, we do this quite often. In fact, I think I did it on the video that I created for the axe thing that I did with Scott. The seller agreed to paint a couple of rooms and fix some doors, and I put that right on the video. And hey, what do you got to lose by asking? Listen to this. Here's the pitch. Listen, I'm going to find a tenant buyer for this place, and you know you're not going to collect rent till I do. So it behoove you if we get it in as good a shape as possible so we can show it. So can you get this living room painted? Can you get these doors fixed? Can you get this fixed? Can you get that fixed? And quite often they'll say, yeah, we'll do that. In fact, I told this gal on that video, you got to get this place cleaned up. You got to get the junk out of here. And she did. She did. It took her a couple of weeks, but she did. She got the house cleaned up. She got the junk out of it. She was fully aware she couldn't sell it like that. She was fully aware it needed this stuff. She pointed out to us. And she did the stuff. And we lease optioned the house out for her. And that tenant's living in there today. And I think we got $5,000 out of that deal. I don't remember. So don't be afraid to ask them to do this minor stuff. They know it needs done anyway. All right, 13B talks about a title search. It says that you're going to do a title search, and if there's title problems, that the seller will pay for the title search. What it says. Guys, we have a guy here in Jacksonville that we found. I forgot where we found him. I think we found him at the courthouse sometime doing title searches for somebody else. And he does our title searches. In fact, if you need him, Rick, you let me know. He does our title searches for $55. So he not title policy now, just title search. He creates an abstract, which is just an abstract is just a written record of everything that's recorded on the house. And at the end, he gives us an opinion on what he sees that needs to be fixed, if anything. So for $55, we get a title search, plus we get something to put in the file to have there, to use if we ever needed it. And you need to do the same thing. Find somebody who will do cheap title searches for you, probably not your title company, unless you can cut a deal with them. A title search is nothing but a little bit of manpower. There's no cost in it, it's just a little bit of manpower. And it doesn't take that long to do a title search. So don't be paying out the nose because somebody wants to get rich off of you doing title searches. He charges, I think, $65 normally. We got him down to $55 because we're going to do quite a few of them. And that's a price I'm willing to pay. It's the cost of doing business. Let's see. Let's go down to 14 because this is the big one. Number 14 deals with the price and the terms of the option. The tenant buyer agrees to pay for said property the sum of star. There's a star in the blank because down at the bottom of the page is where we identify the purchase price. We put a star there. We have to put a star down at the bottom so that the reader can see that that star matches the one above and that the intent is that that line is to be inserted in that blank. And it says that the purchase price equals the loan balance plus 10. I want you to put in there at time of closing, if you will make said note. The purchase price equals the loan balance at the time of closing plus $10,000 cash, because that's the deal we made, plus pay off the IRS lien, but the total is not to exceed $123,500. Now, is the total going to come anywhere close to $123,500? Turn back a page. What's the loan balance on the house? $108,500 plus $10,000 makes $118,500 plus $5,000 IRS lien makes $123,500. Everybody understand that? Hello? But of those three, which one goes down every single time a rent payment is paid? The loan balance. So I just put the not to exceed the $123,500 for safety's sake, since in case something weird happens. Maybe another lien pops up or something. So everybody see how I identified the purchase price? Very simply. It's the loan balance plus whatever cash I agreed to pay you, plus whatever lien we know is on the house that I agreed to take over. By the way, if I do pay off that IRS lien, am I going to pay $5,000? No, I'm going to try to go get a discount. Okay. Let's move on down then. On page 15, this is where you get all the goodies. This is where we're going to take a break in a minute. I forgot, you guys have been here over 2 hours now, haven't you? Okay. Let me get through this and we'll take a break, all right? This is where you write in the goodies. I've got washer and dryer in here because you'll notice the line above it, the Ranger refrigerator, is built right into the language. So you don't need to write that in there. I just assume Ranger and refrigerator comes with every house, don't you? It should. When I'm buying, it should. Comes with every house. So I just leave it in there. And if there's a washer and dryer, you write that. If there's a John Deere tractor in the garage, you write that in there. If there's patio furniture out there, you write that in there. If the seller wants to leave, the whole house full of furniture, I tell them point blank, hey, look, if you're moving, you do not have to move this stuff if you do not want to. Leave your furniture, we'll handle it. Will you do that? Yeah, we'll do that for you. Yeah. And believe me, many times they will leave the whole house full of stuff. The whole house full of stuff, which you use sometimes to stage. Sometimes your wife comes and gets it, guys. When you come to my house, I promise you, this is true. All the patio furniture on my patio came out of somebody else's house. It did. And the riding lawnmower that we use on my 10-acre property came out of somebody else's house. It did, honestly. So, write in there whatever you see. And don't be afraid to write it in there. So, worst case, they say, no, I can't leave that. Well, okay, we'll cross that out. Okay, down in paragraph 17, it just basically says that you're going to notify them when you're ready to close. And the rest of it is just kind of self-explanatory stuff. Now, on 18, though, it talks about prorations. It's the standard proration stuff. Taxes will be prorated at closing. And paragraph 19 talks about insurance. And I believe it says in there that they are to name you as additional insured. But I can tell you right now, I have never had a seller do that in my life. And just ain't that important to me. But I think it says that you also have the rights. Yeah, in the event of loss or destruction in whole or in part of said property, the tenant buyers will have the option to proceed with the closing and accept the insurance proceeds for said damages or to declare the lease option null and void, releasing both parties from any obligations hereinafter except for the return of reimbursable expenses. So you get paid back those at the very least. Guys, if you have a fire in a house, the first thing that's going to get paid off is the loan. So there probably ain't nothing left for you anyway. Especially in today's world where the loans equal such a high degree of the purchase price. And on insurance, some people are under the mistaken impression that when you have a fire, the bank has to release the money to you to rebuild your house. You probably should go read your mortgage. The bank has the right to suck up that money. They do not have to sign that check for you. They have the right to apply that entire check to that mortgage balance. Just so you'll know. They do not have to give you the money to fix the house. And I'll tell you right now, if you're having any issues with them, you're behind on your payments or you're a pain in the neck, or they're in a bad mood, they very well may claim rights to that money and not release it to you. So you're stuck with a paid-off house, but it's burnt to the ground, you know. I guess you have to find another place to live. So also, some people are under the mistaken impression that if the bank puts insurance on your house for you, that it insures you. If a bank places insurance policy on your house, you get not one nickel if it burns to the ground. They're buying mortgagee insurance. They're buying insurance to protect themselves only and not you. So never let a bank put a policy on your house. Not to mention it'll cost you probably twice as much as if you put your own on there. Never let a bank force place insurance on your property. It does not protect you. You will not get one red cent.